Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast for another team season preview. And this time, our team we're covering is the New Orleans Saints. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis. With me, I've got a returning guest, well known if you're an NFL fan on TikTok as well as TalkSPORT. Back with today is Jay Lawrence. Jay, how are things?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
All good. Yeah, can't complain. Yeah, I was saying to off camera that I'm making the move to Cardiff, rattling through these season previews, and we're over 2/3 of the way done. So I think this is team 23 out of 32. So we're almost at the end, and I'm hoping
Better get cracking. Not too long to go.
We've got Lions later on today recording. We've got Eagles. Hopefully, all goes planned. Eagles, Colts, and I think it's just Eagles and Colts tomorrow, and then the Chiefs next day. So I've got it all planned to be all recorded by the 20th of August. Hopefully that is all the case, and then we can focus on Dublin, and then we can focus on our season predictions episode we do every year, and hopefully we can get that done the Monday before the season starts. Before we go into any of the Saints stuff, you got married recently, so congratulations first of all. How was that?
Yeah, do you know what? I forget about it sometimes, quite genuinely. Quite interesting because we got married in June. We were very lucky. We got married in Greece, and June's a great time of the year to get married. But it just means that for literally the first half of the year, you're just looking ahead to the wedding. So after that, it's almost been recovering is not the word, but you kind of just I don't know. You sort of focus on other things again. But it was amazing, place to get married. As I say, we got married in Greece, so we had a very good time. But I'll be honest, I must have worn my wedding ring 6 times in 2 months because I consistently forget. I'm not somebody that wears jewelry, and I know that a lot of people sleep in their wedding ring, but I just don't find it that comfortable. So I keep forgetting every time I leave the house. I'm like. And again, I've forgotten that I'm meant to be wearing a wedding ring. I don't need to wear it, but you know what I mean. Thank you for asking that.
That's all right. No, it looked a very nice day out, and I realised that I never asked you how you were off camera, so I wanted to save it for the episode. So I was very glad to see that, and it looked like a good day. And of course, I'll be seeing you in person in just literally two weekends time at Dublin. We'll both be attending a college game between Georgia Tech and Florida State. It's my first time ever going to a college game. Is it your first time going to? Obviously,
no. I've been to
New Orleans, Superdome before.
Yeah. I've been to a bunch of college games. I've never been to Dublin though, so so there we go. My first time in Ireland, which I'm very excited about, and I haven't been to a college game for about 5 years, something like that. And the majority of college games that I went to was at my alma mater. Is that how you pronounce it? At Tulane, which is a big fan of Tulane. Go Green Wave, but it's not a typical SEC Big Ten, kind of atmosphere. You've got a lot of people there by our standards, 30,000 people, whatever it is. But it's not 100,000 people like you get at LSU. But I'm very excited about going to Dublin. Never been to Dublin before. I might have a Guinness. Might be that cliche, that stereotype. But also I'm very excited about going to a college game and hopefully feeling that college atmosphere.
Yeah, me too, because I've been to all these games in America, but didn't want to set a foot in a college game. I almost did Ohio State when I had a chance to go there November last year, but I just... I basically was unemployed at that point, and money was a bit tight towards the end of the trip. So I thought, you know what, I need that money to last me for the final 2 or 3 days I was there. So, but that's something I do want to go back to one day, Ohio State especially, and also the Gators for obvious reasons. They are my college team, so I'm going to keep that a bit quiet when I'm watching Florida State play. On that game.
Excited to see Florida State, though. I mean, Florida State is a great, a storied program, isn't it? So it's going to be, a lot of fun. And I know that both of us are getting there fairly early, aren't we, on the day? And it doesn't kick off till 5, which I didn't realize at the time. But it doesn't kick off till 5, which means we're going to have a whole day of basically tailgating and soaking in the atmosphere. So yeah, I'm really, and it's weird because the NFL games, you sort of know when they are, and you sort of, you know that you're going to them. But like, I didn't decide until like literally when I booked my flight like a week ago that I was definitely going. So it's kind of like a bonus day. So yeah, it's gonna be good. It's good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot. I'm looking forward to the tailgate. I'm going to the one that they've arranged. I saw Michael McQuaid, the one he posted about. I believe it is the same one that Pat McAfee is going to the day before. I'm hoping he's still there because that'll be, a fun experience to
Yeah,
see him.
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to send him a message for Michael a message because from NFL Ireland because they organise it, don't they? I need to send him a message just to check that I can get down there as well. But yeah, did you? I went to just as a side topic, I went to play at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium recently. You might have seen this.
I saw your kick.
Awful. It was awful. About 10 yards. 10 yards it went, if that. So anyway, so I went down there. You might have seen this. So Michael and Mark came from NFL Ireland. They came over for it, and Mark broke his leg. Did you know? Have you seen
that?
This?
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
I did see that.
So I'm on Mark's team, and it's like we're playing American football, flag football, and we're playing football, soccer as well. And there's like a collision. It's no one's fault really, But anyway, so he's in pain, and I'm like, this looks bad. He might have fractured his leg. Clean cut, clean. Like the X-ray was, and it's like, oh my goodness, I felt so bad for him. He had to skip his holiday. He couldn't go. Anyway, it was
Wow.
he probably has the amazing thing to say that he is the first person to break his leg at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, or maybe break a bone. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a new stadium, isn't it? And I don't know if anybody else has. Anyway, it was. I had a good time. I don't know if Mark did.
That day looked really good. Actually, I saw a few friends of the podcast were there. I saw Dan Hambridge was there.
Dan. I met Dan for the first time. What a lovely man. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah.
I didn't realize that it totally clicks when I heard him speak that he was the guy from the Philadelphia Cheese advert.
Oh, I didn't even know. I know that he does voiceovers because we were talking about it, but I didn't know that he does the Philadelphia one. I've heard him do other adverts though. I did tell him that, like, because my day job is I'm a radio presenter, so we have ads to play, and I think that I must have played an advert, and I was like, I recognize this voice. I recognize him from somewhere. But yeah, no, it's been quite a good like couple of weeks to get in the groove, get into the scheme of things, get excited.
Yeah, I mean, I actually heard him literally whilst watching. I covered the Oxford Norwich game for Vavel, and I remember the halftime advert. I think it was Fantasy EFL. It was, and he was there again. I heard his voice again, so I'm hearing him everywhere at the moment. And I didn't realize as well just how big his girlfriend was on socials, how many followers she had. I mean, I saw when I first came across his work, and then I came across his other half and saw her profile. She got loads of followers. It's a lot of people I know do follow her. So yeah, it's I think if you put them together, they're probably at 1 million followers between them. I reckon. That's probably completely wrong maths, but the amount of followers they both have together, it must be very.
And they seem like lovely people, which is the most important thing, isn't it? As well.
Yeah,
so
it's Sam was very good at his time as well. When he came on to talk about his draft experience, he was very good at his time. Yeah, very much enjoyed having him on. Now let's move on to the Saints because that is why we're here today. Talk all things 2024. We will go through the quick ins and outs, the main ins and outs of the Saints off season. So the main outs include the likes of Marcus May, James Winston, Marcus Callaway, and Michael Thomas, who was obviously a long time Saint, as well as a brief Saint, Nathan Peterman, in and out within a few weeks. And then the main ins include Jesse Davis, a former Dolphin, Chase Young, Cedric Wilson, another former Dolphin, Willie Gay, as well as a very close to home player in Charlie Smythe, IPP player. And in the draft, you took Taddy Fuaga, offensive tackle, 14th overall. The best name in the whole draft, Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback, 41st overall, as well as Spencer Rattler, 150th overall, the quarterback. Wide receiver, Bob Means, 170th overall. Jalen Ford, linebacker, 175th overall. Christian Boyd, defensive tackle, 199th overall. And then Josiah Ezerim, 239th overall. Overall for you, Jay, your take on the Saints off season?
Not the best. Not the best. I think that there's right. Let's try and just think about just a few things, and I'll try and do this coherently as opposed to just spewing loads of information. But number one, I was sad to see Michael Thomas go because he has been such a stalwart for the Saints since he was drafted. I mean, the past few years, really, it's been dogged down by injury. But I don't doubt that he's got a lot of talent. I wouldn't be surprised to see him join. Oh, I'm surprised he's not joined a team already, but he will join a team at some point, and he might be a big difference maker because he's a very talented man. Um, the incomings in terms of non draft, they've been okay, but they've not set the world alight. I think it's important that Chase Young came aboard on a 1-year deal. Probably works for him. He does a good job this year, and he can move somewhere else for more money. If you get Chase Young like you did the first year that he was with Washington, it's going to be great. Apparently, he's been good this offseason, though he has been dealing with an injury earlier on that I think involved surgery. Willie Gay, fine. It's good to have someone challenging to be a starting linebacker. It's an improvement in that linebacking core, but you already have Pete Werner. You've already got Demario Davis, who are probably going to be starting that. Who else have we got that's left or has joined as a free agent? Let me have a quick look. Okay, Cedric Wilson Jr. I mean, you might know more than I do about Cedric Wilson Jr., to be fair, in regards to, because obviously he came from the Miami Dolphins. Did he come from the Miami Dolphins? Or did he come from the Cowboys? Am I getting confused?
From the Cowboys to the Dolphins, then the Dolphins to yourselves. But
to the Saints, right? Yeah.
Honestly, we didn't see much of him. He was, I think, at something like, I want to say 238 yards the whole season last year, or something like that. It was very not many targets first of all, but then not really many receptions. But he did have a couple of plays where he did well, and there's a couple of big plays he made. But really, apart from that, it was pretty much non-existent, really, his time at the Dolphins, particularly that season.
Okay, so that kind of builds my first point, and one of the biggest concerns. There's a couple big concerns, in my opinion, for the New Orleans Saints, and the first one is going to be their wide receiver core, where you've got Chris Olave, who is an undisputed, wide receiver number one. Rashid Shaheed, who is a burner. He's just signed a new deal, which is basically quite good for the Saints, really. It's not very expensive deal. He is an exciting talent. He's your wide receiver 2 as it stands. And you've got A.T. Perry, who has made some appearances last year as your wide receiver 3. You get one injury to any of those 3. I mean, it's already not strong for your starting 3, to be honest with you. But you get one injury to that, and it makes life very difficult when you've got backing up Cedric Wilson Jr., Equinemius St. Brown, who I'm not even sure is going to make the roster, to be honest with you. And then, you've got a bunch of other players like Bub Means. You've got Puka Nakua's brother, Samson Nakua, as well. Shaquan Davis joined recently. So I don't love the wide receiver core at all. It is something that maybe should have been considered bolstering in more solid ways during the draft or during the off season. And when it comes to receiving, you bring in tight ends as well. Juwan Johnson, who is not fit at the moment. He wasn't fit last year. He's not fit now. You've got Taysom Hill, obviously, who's a jack of all trades, and who I imagine is going to be featured quite heavily in this new offense that the Saints are going to have. Foster Moreau as well as tight end, who didn't do an awful lot last season. It's nothing to really excite anybody there. And when you've got the wide receiver, you've got Alvin Kamara, who is getting older. I still rate him, not as much as I do other players, obviously, but I still rate him. Jamal Williams, and then Kendre Miller, who got brought in for who was drafted 2 drafts ago, who's barely been able to make the field, and that Dennis Allen, the head coach of the Saints, he basically has been quite vocally critical, like he needs to basically learn how to stay fit. So offensively, skill player wise, is not a great look. And then staying on the offense, the big thing that hasn't been mentioned so far is a player that is almost certainly going to retire. He's out this season. but he's almost certainly going to retire. And that's Ryan Ramczyk, your right tackle, who has been a consistent performer for the Saints. He has been somebody that you've been able to rely on basically since he was drafted a few years ago. And now injuries are basically taking its toll, where he's not going to be playing this season. Almost certainly is going to retire, basically. So you've got no right tackle. You thought, okay, we're going to bring in Talisi Fuaga to join the offensive line to bolster that, but then the Ryan Ramczyk issue comes to the fore, which means that the left tackle that you were basically replacing because he was a first round bust, Trevor Penning. So you're going to put Fuaga in at left tackle, replacing Trevor Penning, who just was not playing, not even well. He wasn't even average for the Saints. You're going to replace him, but now because Ryan Ramczyk has gone down, well, not gone down, but you know what I mean. Trevor Penning is now having to play right tackle, position that he didn't even play before, and he wasn't playing well. Preseason game, the first preseason game, that the snaps that I saw of Trevor Penning, it did not look good. There's been situations I know in training camp where Chase Young has dominated Trevor Penning. This is a big guy, but I suppose that physical traits alone is not enough when it comes to being on the offensive line. So quite concerned about the offensive line. Left guard doesn't even seem like it's sorted either. So essentially you've got Fuaga that you're hoping to be good, a rookie at left tackle. You've got Lucas Patrick, who is not somebody that I think that Saints fans or even maybe the Saints coaching staff would have at left guard in ideal circumstances. You've got Eric McCoy, who you're fine with, Cesar Ruiz, who you're fine with, and Trevor Penning, where there's a lot of concern. And that is not even talking about whether people are okay with Derek Carr. That is my view on the offense. I apologize for talking so long there, but there was a lot to go through, I think. So there's a lot of concern, really, for the New Orleans Saints. They are a type of offense that, a type of they've got enough skill players, they've got enough good players that if it all hits on the offense, then it might be good. But if something goes wrong, you are looking at a concerning situation, I think, with the Saints offense. Defense, I have less concern about, to be honest with you. Cam Jordan didn't have a great year last year, but if he manages to he said he had injury, but if he manages to pick it up, get back to the sort of numbers of sacks that you'd be hoping or improve. I think he had 2 last year, so you'd be wanting to improve on that, quite a lot. As I said before, Chase Young coming in, that's helpful. Demario Davis has still been one of the best in the game. Hopefully he continue that. Pete Werner's just signed a new contract. I like the defensive backs as well. There's talk that Justin Simmons might join. Doesn't really sound like he might now, but there's still a chance, I suppose. So you've got Tyrann Mathieu as a free safety. Jordan Howden currently is a strong safety. I suppose they wanted Justin Simmons to go there. And then your cornerbacks, you've got Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the second-round draft pick from this year. Not down to start as it stands. I feel okay about the defense. Saints defense has generally been pretty good over the last few years. It's the offense that is sort of stalled. So, yeah, I got opinions. Andy. Can you tell?
Well, of course, those who know you on TikTok know you always have opinions, which is good for a content creator. It's good. And I obviously do check out Jay Lawrence's TikTok if you haven't already. There's a lot of good content on there, all based on the NFL, a little bit of football as well, and a bit of music comes in as well. So yeah, he covers a lot of bases, which is good to view. Now, we mentioned it a little bit there about Derek Carr. Now, it's no doubt that he'll be starting week 1. That's not even a question unless he gets injured. But with Spencer Rattler coming in and Derek Carr not exactly lighting the world so far during his time with the Saints, do you think Derek Carr will be the QB1 come week 17, come week 18?
Unless things go very wrong, yeah. And I'm talking about nothing offensive line related, nothing skill player related. If the offense just can't get going with Derek Carr, then maybe, and Dennis Allen and the rest of the staff, probably not Clint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator, but particularly Dennis Allen, I suppose. If they get to the point where they're like, right, we need to make a change because the team is now performing badly, we are not getting results. I'll be honest, let's just try and save our jobs. Then they might try and do something different. But, he didn't look to really do that at all last year. And granted, Derek Carr did perform better at the end of the year. So I'm going to put it out there and say I don't see any changes this season under center, unless things go really wrong. If you're looking at a middling team, I think Derek Carr is still quarterback one.
Makes sense, because I said before on a lot of podcasts when teams have played you in the win-loss tie section, you guys for me just scream a 7-9 season. It's one of the more obvious 7-win seasons I've ever seen. The team you've got nowhere near bad enough to be a 4-win team or a 3-win team, but also nowhere near good enough to be a 12-13-win team. And I think despite even with a poor division, I still think it's looking at the roster you've got overall, it is just a very clear 7-9 season for me personally. From an outsider, you might think differently. We'll get onto that later on in the win-loss tie section. But yeah, I just feel like this team is in that sort of middle of the road bit where you're not going to be bad enough to be getting a high draft pick. You're not going to be good enough to be making playoff runs. So
I think that there's. Yeah, it's just, I feel like it's a shame, really, because you've got some real, quite genuinely legendary player. Well, legendary is quite a strong word, I suppose, but really successful players that are currently on the Saints squad. But quite a few of them, they're getting towards the end of their career, and I think it's a problem. But it's also a problem for them in the respect that this isn't really how they're going to want to end their career. If, as you say, it does end up being 7-9, you've got Cam Jordan. You've got, even someone like Marshawn Lattimore, who is a great player. It could easily be that he just doesn't want to be on the Saints after this season, or maybe even midway through the season if it's all not going his way. Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara as well, who's been great for the Saints over the last, few years since he was drafted back in 2017. So there's all these players that are going to go down as, especially Cam Jordan and especially Alvin Kamara, I think, they're going to go down as like Saints legends. But it's not good for them. That's not fun for them. And it doesn't really make a difference if they're legends or not, if the team is, as you say, like a 7 and no, it's not 7-9 anymore, is it? It's a
oh my god, no,
it'd be 7-10.
Yeah.
I love how you're like we could say 8-9. Nah. We're saying 7-10. we're giving them the extra loss. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Now, the only thing that it could be that could go in the Saints' favor is the division that they're in. And people are loving the Atlanta Falcons this offseason. I'm not as convinced. I honestly am not. I can't quite see how drafting a quarterback and adding a quarterback, I don't think it solves all the issues. But who are their receiving options apart from Drake London and Kyle Pitts? I suppose you could add Bijan Robinson. Maybe he's a receiving option. I suppose maybe you count him as a receiving option, or and the same goes with the defense as well. I don't think that they're solving anything there. So just because you've got in a high-profile quarterback and there's been a lot of talk about you because you've drafted another quarterback, it doesn't mean that everything's solved. Carolina Panthers, they'll improve this year because it's hard not to. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, no one's talking about. They probably are going to be the favorites to win the division. Well, they should be the favorites to win the division. They were the best team last year in a poor division, or not as if they ran away with it by any means. But they've actually had some players stay. They've got a bit of consistency, I suppose it's all down to Baker Mayfield, really. But as I say, it's not as if there's a runaway leader. We're not in the NFC West where you'd have to be dealing with the Rams particularly and the 49ers. You don't have to deal with that, You have a legitimate shot of finishing first in your division. And that's not to say that's not because you're an amazing team. It's just because the division's not very good as it stands. We all know what the NFL is like. It could be that the NFC South somehow has some powerhouse that we that we don't know about yet. But yeah, it's the roster. I agree with you, and as you say, we'll go through it and we'll find out whether or not I agree with you when we go through the games. But would you rule out the Saints winning the division? That's my question, actually, Andy. Would you rule it out? You'd rule it out.
Yeah.
That is funny. That is funny. Okay, I take back everything I said then.
Yeah,
I take back everything I said.
A little bit of a spoiler into our season predictions, but I think it's one of the Buccaneers or Falcons for me. I think the Panthers are nowhere near competing for an NFC South or even a wild card spot in the playoffs, and I just think that I think the Buccaneers are a slightly better coach, and I think the Falcons have finally got a decent quarterback, which you haven't had really since Matt Ryan, really since his last couple of years when ski whiff. So I just feel like, whilst I've said before, I do think it's easily the worst division in the NFL. I don't think that's even close. But I also think that maybe not.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I just think it's funny. I'm agreeing with you. And do you know what's funny is that, like, and I'd be happy to talk about this more another time or later in the podcast or whatever. But I'm hosting the official podcast for the Jacksonville Jaguars UK in Ireland, which is amazing because I got into the NFL by, and this does have a point, by the way. I got into the NFL by moving to New Orleans when I was a student, and that's how I got into the NFL. So what happens when you come back? You come back to the UK, you try and get involved in it. Obviously, you've got this love for New Orleans, but you come to the UK and it's all, the Jags are making such an effort. The Jags want to be part of the UK culture, as it were. So it's amazing to be on board with them because obviously got a lot of love for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I've loved that. The reason I bring that up is because for years, the AFC South was a poor division. For years. And, the NFC South was actually, at one point, a few years ago, it had three teams in particular. The irony is I'm talking about the Panthers, Falcons, and Saints. The irony is it's the Bucs that won the Super Bowl. But they were the division that it was a really good division for a few years. And now it's just completely flipped, So it was great because I get to talk about the Saints and how the division's so bad, but also I get to talk about the AFC South at the moment on Teal Talk, the podcast. So at least I get to talk about one division that's good at the moment, I suppose. But yeah, NFC South is not the best division in the world. But you got to deal with it, and it changes. Things change so much, and it could be in 2 years' time we're talking about a completely different Saints team.
Exactly. That's why, to me, that is the best thing about the NFL is. Maybe the intro to the CBS coverage is maybe the best thing, but I think just the parity in NFL is great. You've got, I think that I said it before, literally about 2 podcasts ago, where 10 years ago, Bengals and Bills were two of arguably the worst team in that conference. Now they've got Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. They're playoff contenders every year, and on the other hand, the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015, haven't made the playoffs since. The Raiders made Super Bowl in the early 2000s, haven't won a playoff game since. Giants won 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. They've won 1 playoff game, I believe, since maybe 2. So it's like we love Liverpool and we love football, and we're always there and thereabouts. We're always for most years in the top 6, and you always get Arsenal, Chelsea, or Man City. It's always been, I think, it's only been about, I want to say 7 winners of the Premier League in history, but then there's been 7 winners of the NFL in the Super Bowl the last 10, 15 years. So it's so much better because it's from a neutral's point of view, because you just get so much. It could be anyone. I know the Chiefs have won back-to-back, but actually it could be anyone. You had, there was no back-to-back in 20 years before the Chiefs did it this year, and there's never been a three-peat ever in NFL history. So, it's just been good that we do get different winners each year. Most of the time, we get so many teams that go from 4th to 1st, or they're in the playoffs one year, they don't make the playoffs the next year. You can never tell, even on any, excuse the pun, any given Sunday, anyone can be anyone. So it's really is, one of the best sport for that. For parity, there's no sport better than that. NBA you could maybe argue, but yeah, certainly NFL you just don't know who's going to win each year. It's great.
Well, yeah, each week a lot of the time, as you say, any given Sunday, yeah.
It's, you think about the Jags, they beat the Dolphins and Bills and Urban Meyer, don't beat anyone else, and that's two good teams there. So it's yeah, crazy sport. Couple things I want to mention before we go into your win-loss tie section. You mentioned Dennis Allen there. You gave your take on him, and you probably did give an answer to what you think his sort of status is as a coach of Saints. But do you see him staying on past a year, or do you think that this will be his last year as the head coach?
I don't think we need to keep we don't need this to be like an uber long conversation really, because it is at the end of the day, it all just depends on how this. I know this is so stupid. This is a stupid answer. It all depends on how the Saints do, right? Which means that if the Saints end up getting to the playoffs, almost certainly he's going to stay. It's just the nature of the beast when it comes to how NFL owners work and how it goes in any sport, really. You do better, you keep your job. How much better is the big thing. So if the Saints don't make the playoffs, I think that's probably the best cut-off line, I'd say, actually. Saints don't make the playoffs, Dennis Allen, he won't be the head coach anymore. If they make the playoffs, then depending on how they do, like if they're out and they get absolutely trounced in the first round, then he might still not have a job. Anything above that, if they win the first game, he's keeping the job.
Yeah, fair enough. But he can't.
I think that's probably a fair enough thing to assume. Now, do I want him to be the head coach? I'm not convinced. I think he's a fantastic defensive coordinator, and he has been. And the defense for the Saints were good enough last year. But is he someone that inspires the troops? I don't know, but maybe he doesn't have to be. Bill Belichick maybe wasn't exactly the most, inspiring of coaches out in the locker room, but he did the job, didn't he? So yeah, that's probably my. One thing actually I do want to talk about really quickly as well, just in case we don't talk about him, is I'll keep it short. Charlie Smith, the kicker. So the Saints kicker last season was Blake Grupe. They bring in competition this offseason in the name of Charlie Smith, former Gaelic football player, who basically kicked in American football for the first time about 12 months ago, got put on the International Pathway Program, ends up, after going through the training there in Florida for trying out for NFL teams, he gets to go and join the Saints this offseason. And it's basically a battle between him and Blake Grupe about who is going to be the kicker. But through the nature of him being an international player, however, the Saints would be able to put him on an extra place on their practice squad, which means that in all likelihood, it's likely that Blake Grupe is going to get the starting job, I would imagine, which means that Charlie Smith goes on to the practice squad. However, he just kicked a game-winning field goal in the first week of the preseason. Yes, it's the preseason. I don't care. He has kicked once in an American football game. Once. It happened, and it was a game-winning field goal. Unbelievable. So you know what? He can retire now, and he's 1 for 1, and it was a game winner. So I mean, that's it's quite incredible, really. So it's quite amazing seeing his journey, and hopefully it doesn't end now.
It must be cool as well seeing a Brit play for your team. Because I remember I was saying that.
Well, he's not British. Let's remember this. He's not British. Yeah, he's Irish. Let's remember this.
I'll end that point right there.
Well, I mean, but it doesn't matter because I'm not Irish. But it does not mean that you don't want people from. You don't want an Irish person on your team. Do you know what I mean? You of course you do. That sounded weird. What I meant was you're not bothered when you don't want. I actively do want people from Ireland, people from elsewhere. I'm completely doing my words here. What I'm trying to say is, I would like Charlie Smith to do well. In an ideal world, he would be the kicker for the New Orleans Saints, and he would be fantastic and consistent. I have no doubt he's got the leg for it. But, I have not seen him enough to know what his consistency is like. And that's the big thing, I think.
Well, we will soon find out. I'm I'm sure all those Brits and Irish NFL fans will be cheering him on and hoping he can make the roster. Same as Reece Samet, same with his name's Travis Clayton and everyone else who's been coming through the IPP. Hopefully, as many as possible can make the final 53-man rosters or even the practice squads. But we will head on to our final segment, which is going to be our win-loss tie sections. For those of you listening at home that haven't yet heard this part of the podcast, each fan who comes on predicts their team's record by going through each game and answering with a win-loss tie record. Now, Jay, you came on a year ago. Saints went 9-8 last season. Do you by chance remember what your prediction was 12 months ago?
Do you remember it? Have you got it in front of you? Yeah. It will be something like, I reckon 13-4.
Oh, no, not quite that optimistic.
12-5?
10-7. So only
my goodness.
Only one difference in it, one game difference.
That's not so bad.
No,
I thought I was going to be way more optimistic than that.
No, it's it's fair play. You weren't far off getting it exactly bang on. So salute. But we will go on to week 1. It is a home game against the Carolina Panthers. Jay Lawrence, win, loss, or tie?
Oh, we'll have a win there.
Okay. Week 2, it's your first road game of the season as you travel to Dallas to take on the Cowboys.
That'll be a loss.
Fair enough. That's not a shock. Week 3, you're at home to the Philadelphia Eagles.
That'll be a loss.
Week 4, your first road game in an NFC South battle against the Falcons.
That'll be a loss.
Well, it's not going to get any better because week 5, you're on the road at Arrowhead against the Chiefs.
That'll be a loss.
Probably the easiest one predicted the whole schedule. Week 6 is another road game. This one is against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay, well, I will win that one, I reckon. Saints have got that.
So week 7, you're at home to the Denver Broncos.
Oh, that'll be a victory. That'll be a really good game, actually. Sean Payton's homecoming.
Of course,
homecoming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'll be certainly an interesting watch.
The Saints will be really up for that. They'll be really up for beating Sean Payton. Yeah,
I can imagine. Week 8, you go from Payton to Harbaugh as you take on the Chargers at home.
Actually, that's a victory. That's a victory.
Okay. Moving to 500 at the moment. 4-4.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not. It starts off
not all over.
But 3-win streak. You're now 4-4. And next game, you may even get any better as you have a road game against the Carolina Panthers.
Okay, we'll put a victory there.
And week 6, you're at home again, but this one against the Falcons.
Victory. What a turnaround for the Saints.
That is amazing. I remember the Colts years ago when 1-5 and then they made the playoffs. This is like reminiscent right now of that. You know, you start 1-4, you win 4 on the bounce. You beat Sean Payton at his old ground, and you've got a week 12 bye, so you're going to go into it in quite good form, unless you stumble week 11 as you host the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, I think that'll be a loss. So
the streak is over. So that means 6-5 heading into the bye week. Week 13, you host the LA Rams.
That'll be a loss.
Nicely back to 500 here with that 6-6. But the next game is on the road to the New York Giants.
That'll be a loss.
I thought you could say a win then. I thought that would be one of the... Okay, interesting. Week 15 is against at home, the Washington Commanders.
That'll be a victory. Jaden Daniels back in Louisiana, though, so there's going to be a lot of people supporting him.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a homecoming as well for him. So that'll be interesting to watch. Whether it be on TV, I don't know. It'll probably be a Red Zone job, but I doubt Sky will be showing it. But I imagine you'll see it on Red Zone or for you, probably Game Pass. To be fair, you'll probably have it on there.
Yeah.
Week 16 is at Lambeau Field against the Packers.
That's a loss. That's a loss. That'll be cold as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean that'll be. I think week 16. I think is the Christmas slate. I want to say, or maybe either way, it'll be late December either way, and that's going to be, I imagine, very cold. Week 17, your final home game of the regular season as you host the Las Vegas Raiders.
That's a victory. That's a victory, and Derek Carr is going to be very up for that if he's starting.
Yeah, he will be.
Yeah, that's a I wouldn't be surprised if that's how the season ends up, something along those lines. To be honest with you, what does it end up as?
Well, you got 1 week left.
Oh, got one more. I did the same thing that you did. I thought it was done by week 16.
Both think it's 2018 again. Actually, maybe Saints want to avoid think about 2018 season. If I'm honest. Week 18 is a road game against the Buccaneers.
But yeah, let's end with a victory. Let's end with a victory.
That moves you to 9-8, which it may sneak you in. It may get you in.
It may sneak the Saints in. To be honest, even with a couple of those games where I said victory, I was like, I can see this. There's a real tough beginning slate actually for the Saints there. Can you just read me the first 5 games again?
So it's Panthers at home, Cowboys on the road, Eagles at home, Falcons on the road, Chiefs at home. The Chiefs are on the road, and to add to that as well, on week 6 on the road again at Buccaneers. So you've got 4 road games in your first 6 games.
That's tough, and the ones that are at home are Panthers, which hopefully is a victory. It's a good one to have actually as a week 1 game anyway, to be fair. And what's the other one? The Eagles at home, which is tough. So it's going to be a case of, that's going to be tough. I think this is fair to say that it's going to be a tough few weeks. But it's like, it's one of those ones where if this is the positive way of looking at it, if you manage to do slightly better than anticipated, then you'll feel good about it. It's just that on the face of it, it's going to be a tough month and a half, and it could be that the Saints are out of the playoff race by November. But as I mentioned before, the division, as you said, 9-8 might be enough to sneak you in if the division's not quite, good enough. So anyway, I do you know what? It's weird actually, because last year I thought I was more confident. I said 10-7. This year, not very confident. I say 9-8. So there's only 1 game difference, which is strange, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it just shows the fine lines between a good season and a bad season.
Well, if they get to 10 victories, then that's a good season. But 10 victories might not be enough. And then if it's not enough to get to the playoffs, you might as well finish with 1 win, because it doesn't matter. None of it matters if you don't get to the playoffs. Do you know what I mean? So exactly. We'll sort of see how it goes, but it's going to be I think it'll be quite tough. I think it'll be quite tough for the Saints this year.
But that is where we'll end the podcast for today. So once again, huge thanks to Jay for coming on to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, mate. I'll see you in a couple Saturdays' time.
Yeah, I'll be seeing you in Temple Bar in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm up for it. I've never been, so I don't mind doing something, something that you're meant to do when you go to Dublin,
Yeah, no, it's I think provided both our flights don't get delayed, we've got a lot of time to kill. So yeah, we'll find something to do, I'm sure. Because I went there years ago. I say years ago, 2021, or 2022 actually, and we didn't do anything else but drink. And I've since stopped drinking alcohol, so I'm very much up for seeing what Dublin has to offer, because I didn't really see much of Dublin. All I saw was the pubs and bars. So it'd be nice to.
So you're not going to. So basically, I'll have the Guinness, and you can have the water or whatever. To be fair, I don't drink very much either, so no. I'll probably have a Guinness, and that'll be it for the day anyway. So I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, I suppose you can't really go in there, have 4 or 5 pints, unless you're like a really good drinker, because
I'm not
you've got to do
at all.
work as well. You got to try and speak on a microphone all
Yeah,
day.
it's a good point. Do you know what? I'm not even. I just feel like I have to have one. I don't.
Yeah,
I
I agree
honestly.
totally.
This is my prediction, Andy. In a couple of Saturdays' time, I'm going to order a Guinness. I'll drink half of it. I won't even finish it, which is dreadful. But that's just standard. What I do is like, I'll have it and I'll be like, yeah, but I don't actually want to drink the whole thing. I just sort of wanted it for, not to say I'm having it, but because I feel like it needs to be done. So that's my prediction. I won't even finish my Guinness, which is dreadful. But never mind.
But will you split the G? That's the most important question.
Yeah. I've never tried. So we'll get photographic evidence of that. Don't worry. We'll
Yeah,
find out. We'll find.
definitely. Yeah, keep an eye out for Jay's content as well as my content and the podcast content on the day itself of the college football game in Dublin. And of course, as he mentioned as well, don't forget to check out Jay's work on Teal Talk, the Jaguars podcast, and obviously his main TikTok as well, Jay Lawrence. But that has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our New Orleans Saints 2024 season preview. And we'll see you guys for our next season preview, which will be the Detroit Lions. See you then.